Hi, hello, everybody. Welcome to Away Games, the Chicago Cubs podcast. My name is Kevin McCaffrey, and look who it is, fresh from a trip to Chicago, of all things. It's Adam Mamawala.
Hello, I went to Wrigley Field against my better judgment, and I had a fine time.
You did. Now, did the Cubs win the game you saw?
I think you know the answer to that, Kevin.
I think I
They have
do.
not won a game at Wrigley Field in quite some time.
Yeah.
I think a couple weeks.
It would be a real trivia question for people if we were doing this live, which why not? Maybe that's something we should look into. Just we'll do it live whenever we happen to do it. Fuck it, we're doing it live, as the piece of shit Bill O'Reilly once said, famously. But yeah, we only know, I think, the last Cubs win because our friend Ken Schultz brought it up in a group chat.
Yeah, the last
Wrigley win.
As it turns out, the last Wrigley win of the year, because the Cubs are done playing in Chicago, was the Jason Hayward very unexpected walk-off home run against the Cincinnati Reds, which I think was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was the last one. So
yeah, and I gotta tell you, I have a real I'm having some real PTSD with the end of this schedule right now, because if you recall a few years ago, which I'm sure you do, the Cubs had a very important 4-game series against the St. Louis Cardinals at that last, like, second to last weekend of the season, and they lost all 4 games, and then they made a very sad trip on the road to Pittsburgh, and that is literally exactly what this schedule is, except this time we knew that they were already out of it.
Yeah, and this time the Cubs, it hurt less in that way. We're talking, of course, when the Cubs really still had a shot at the playoffs, and that was the Kimbrel giving up back-to-back homers, I think, and the falling apart of the end of the Joe Madden era of Cubdom, the 2019. But yeah, this time they helped the Cardinals go from 12 straight wins to 16 straight wins. The Cardinals have won. They began their run 2 games above 500, and now they are, as we speak, on the cusp of officially clinching that second wild card spot. At this point, fuck the Cardinals for sure.
Yeah.
Don't like them. At this point, do I want them to win every regular season game the rest of the way and then go into a 1-game playoff with the Dodgers on like a 22-game winning streak?
Right.
Yeah, I do. I think that's the most interesting storyline, right?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it goes without saying that it would be the most Cardinal shit ever to have a season like this, win that 1-game wild card, end up winning the World Series, and have a dude named Lars Nootbaar be the World Series MVP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Lars Nootbaar in so much as I can like a Cardinal, but
for sure. And Lars Nootbaar does sound like the level of candy that would sponsor our podcast. I think like we could be brought to you by Lars Nootbaar in another world.
We're brought to you only by Left Twix. We're trying to get the whole thing right.
Yeah, gotta break it down the middle for us. We are brought to you by Manscaped, by the way, and you can use the promo code AWAYGAMES for 20% off any Manscaped order. You know what Manscaped is. We don't have to go too deep into it right now, I don't think. But
if you want to go deep into yourself,
we go.
I have a product for you.
Yeah, we sure do. You keep this podcast going if you want it to keep going. And if you're listening, I bet you do. And follow us, because we will keep active on Twitter. We'll keep active on the podcast too, but at Away Games Pod on Twitter and Instagram and all those things. But yeah, I think like watching the Cardinals take a truly historic winning streak into a 1-game playoff with the dominant defending asterisk champions of the Dodgers would be great. I think it would be really fun, because it would be either the Dodgers get eliminated, which I enjoy, or the Cardinals could have won like 20 plus games and then lost the one that mattered, which would be also beautiful, right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how locked in the Giants are to winning the division at this point. I'm sure whoever loses that division will not be overly excited about facing a Cardinals team that is this hot. I mean, we've seen it many times in baseball before, going all the way back to like the 2007 Rockies, who just like could not lose, and then pretty much rode that all the way to the World Series, and then just ran into an even hotter Red Sox team. But I mean, while it pains me to say this, credit where it's due to the Cardinals. I mean, I did not see this coming at all. I have friends who are Cardinals fans who, good people on both sides, that sort of thing, who were very much resigned to the fact that they were just not going to make the playoffs this year. And I will say, having been at Wrigley, so I was at the day game on Friday. I saw our boy Justin Steele, who had a rough outing, but cool to see him in person after like talking to him on this podcast and being like, "Hey, looking forward to seeing you at Wrigley someday," and then actually sitting there was kind of neat. But it was kind of pleasant to be in an environment where I wasn't super locked into every pitch, and even sitting around a large number of Cardinals fans around me, there was a pretty jovial atmosphere of like, they weren't giving us a lot of shit. It's like, we're not going to kick you while you're down. We know it sucks for you, and we're all just like trying to enjoy a nice day at the ballpark. So
Right.
I guess if there's any silver lining, it was that. The Cubs at least gave me something to cheer about. They had a weird like 5-run inning that came completely out of nowhere and still doesn't fully make sense to me. Sergio Alcantara hit a very wind aided home run, and yeah, I mean, it was still nice to be at Wrigley. I guess I'll
Well,
say
that's
that.
good. And Adam, was it this season you saw a Cubs Cardinals game in St. Louis that was
Yeah,
important and the Cubs won, that Ryan
yeah.
Tepera got out of a bases loaded jam
Tepera got
in?
out of a huge jam.
Boys.
Javi hit a game-winning home run in extra innings to center field. And much like John Lester and Schwarber's appearance in Nationals uniforms, that game also feels like 10 years ago.
It feels so long ago. If honestly, I was thinking about it as you were saying that and thinking, yes, that was this year. But also, if you told me no, that was also 2019, I would have said sure. Like it feels so long ago there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you talking about seeing Justin Steele in person. I mean, it's one of the few things that sort of matters going into next year as far as the baseball we're watching at this point are your Justin Steele. I mean, really Justin Steele, Adbert Alzolay, and Keegan Thompson, probably almost above all else, as we're watching here as guys who could theoretically be important contributors going forward. And Steele had a game that was sort of like a lot of his starts lately, where a lot of it was very good. And he looked good. I was watching on TV, which I haven't been doing all the time lately. And then he gave up 2 home runs. I'm basically, batting practice sort of fastballs that caught the middle of the plate, middle up a little bit. And Steele has good enough stuff where you'll be able to get away with that sometimes, but he just didn't get away with the mistakes on those 2. Then the Tyler O'Neill one, he just golfed off his feet. So that, I mean, that
Right.
nothing Steele
Well,
can do
O'Neill's
about that.
hitting everything in sight right now.
Exactly. But I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where Steele looked pretty good, except for those two
Right.
pitches, which you could tell after the first one, he, hit it with a good yell immediately after it came off the bat. And it must be extremely frustrating for him to not be able to quite finish off just a good start in that way.
Right.
And I think it's just a thing with all these guys that we're gonna be watching coming into next year. Is like, it's frustrating, but those starts do have to get finished off at some point if you're going to be in the rotation for a for a competitive team.
And from what I saw you tweeting, it seemed like there was kind of a tough call that went against Steele, and then that was followed by a home run to Goldschmidt.
Yes.
It seemed like there were a couple calls that were very bad, because was it Schwindel who was really upset about a call? Like there seemed to be a couple that people were upset about.
The Schwindel strike was far too low and far too outside. It's one of the worst strike calls I've seen of the season on Schwindel there. And it was a poorly umpired game behind home plate overall. And yeah, Steele had struck out Goldschmidt with a great at bat, plus slider down and in to get him swinging in his first at bat, and Steele had him struck out in the at bat Goldschmidt homers. So if there's a good umpire there, then those 2 runs aren't on the board. And I'm saying all this and I sincerely mean it, and I think Steele would feel the same way, where it's just like at some point you just gotta get the results. But with Steele in a way different from like Keegan Thompson obviously came in. And this is his first season in the majors getting starts as well. We've seen a lot of like shorter starts from Keegan, but a good one this week. 7 strikeouts, a lot of swing and misses from him. So that was good. Adbert, again, pretty good in that piggyback role, which they've been going to him in. But I think we have to remember that Steele had success in the minors as a starter, and then dealt with a lot of injuries, was coming back plus reliever in high leverage situations earlier this year, then got another injury, and then had to build back up from that. So it's been a very roller coastery road for Steele, just getting to a point where you have to going from reliever to injured to starting in the majors and coming off a 2020 season. So it's going to be interesting. I'm very interested to see how he looks after coming off an off season where he has to be able to get himself prepared to compete for a starting rotation spot.
Right. And that's also something that feels like years ago is like thinking of Justin Steele coming in high leverage relief spots. Like that's one of the highlights of his season, is that big appearance against the Dodgers in a series that the Cubs swept the Dodgers in at Wrigley, which seems like it was approximately 2002.
Yes, it does. And I think that's the thing where I don't think Steele or Keegan or Adbert should be in anything harder than pencil into any of these rotation spots. You can't have all three having rotation spots next year. If all three are coming out of spring training and in the rotation, to me, the Cubs punted, they failed at their job. And that's to say nothing negative of the abilities of those guys. I think they all could be good starters, but I think you just can't count on them rotation spots at this very moment. But coming into this year, Steele didn't know whether he was a reliever or a starter, and going into next year, he has a little more clarity there that you're shooting at a starter's role, and I think that should help him.
Well, and one thing that I've heard them mention on the broadcast is that Steele does not at this time have a changeup, and theoretically, if that's something that he works on and develops, that could help him against righties, because it's pretty much been a very direct split of like lefties hit like 100 against him and righties are hammering him.
And I mean, same thing with Adbert, right? Where the lefties hit Adbert better than almost any pitcher was hit in terms of splits this year. So what does that show you? I mean, that shows you that, okay, is the Steele Adbert platoon kind of a situation that you could go to, where one guy throws a couple innings, then you just flip the lineup like that and force the other team to make San Francisco Giants style, like wholesale changes to their lineup. And I don't know, but ultimately you don't want to be having that many thoughts about it. You want if you want a guy in the rotation for a contender to be able to figure out how to at least be playable against both sides of the plate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's going to be a very weird end to the season and even postseason where like the Cubs season is going to end in less than a week, but many of our beloved Cubs are going to kind of live on into the playoffs. And there's a very real possibility that we get to see Rizzo versus Schwarber in a 1-game wild card. There's a decent chance that if the Cardinals knock off the Dodgers in a 1-game playoff, we have some like John Lester versus Chris Bryant at bats in the first round of the playoffs, so it's going to be interesting.
And Javi Baez did everything he possibly could to help the Mets survive. He's been the best Mets player basically since he went over there, and I think his WRC plus is sitting around 140 or something. He's just played himself into what should be a good contract for him going forward. And a couple weeks after the super overblown thumbs down thing, Mets fans, it seems like they love him, as they should. So all the ex-Cubs are either going to the playoffs or were, in Javi's case, were the best player on the team as they collapsed. The Mets, fun fact, as Bleacher Nation, I think, pointed this out or is blasting this out, that Mets set a new record for most days in first place while ending the season with a losing record. Wow. Over 100 days in first place for the Mets. I remember when the Cubs were in first place for a while.
I do remember that. I want to apologize to our listeners that if you hear any dinging in the background, I just got an iPhone and I know so little about iPhones that I don't even know how to silence this fucking thing. Kevin, can you give me a tutorial?
Yeah, there's a little thing on the side, on the left side of your phone. There's a little almost imperceptible up and down bar, and you can
I see.
Flip it to the other thing.
I flipped it all the way down and I keep hearing these dings and it's really frustrating. I got to tell you.
Yeah, that should be silent mode. See, this is brought to you by now we're brought to you by Apple. Now we're bringing you big sponsorship energy going forward here. Yeah, I don't know. We're rooting for all all of our fun ex-Cubs here, obviously, and it is just does make it all the more frustrating. Where it's like, oh, they're contributors on good teams, right. So maybe they're okay. And
here's an interesting question. In a scenario where each of their respective teams goes the farthest, who do you see having the biggest potential impact in the playoffs of all of our ex-Cubs? I mean, you could make a case for really all of them.
That's a really good question. And I mean, maybe Chris Bryant, especially now that Brandon Belt has an injury that looks like it could be taking him out, and Brandon Belt's been killing the ball for the Giants this year, and he just fractured his thumb, so it's unclear how much playing time he's going to get. So I think they could definitely use Bryant to step up offensively there. I think that could be a big deal. Kimbrel has not been great since going over to the White Sox, but that's another thing where in playoff baseball, you end up using your high leverage relievers basically every game. So
Right.
Craig Kimbrell could be a sneaky one of those two.
How's Tepera been?
Tepera's been good. I think he had a couple of tough games early, and then since then he's locked it down. So Tepera's been very good. I mean, if you just say Cubs bullpen pieces who went to the South Side, I think that's going to be, if the White Sox go anywhere, I think Kimbrell and Tepera are going to have a lot to do with it.
Right, and I feel like the White Sox have cooled off. I mean, they came out of the gate so hot, and I believe that they will end up being like kind of the third seed in the AL at this point. Also, I mean, I don't think the A's are going to probably get into that one game wild card, but Chafin is the closer there. So we got Cubs sprinkled all over the place. Our boy Jake Marisnick not going to make the playoffs because, man, what a disappointing season for the Padres. Holy shit.
Another first place team for a while that just fell off the map. I mean, the Dodgers, the Cubs, the Mets, I think they were all in first place at the same time in May.
It was like a 3-team race in the West for a long time with the Giants. Like, I think people perceive them to be overachieving,
right?
And the Dodgers playing well and the Padres playing well, like in May and June.
And I do think this is the Padres show you how much starting pitching you need if you're actually going to contend, because it seems like they overloaded on it and it still wasn't enough. And if you look, this is a team that traded for Yu Darvish, as we might remember, traded for Blake Snell, who who had a real rough first half and then was great after that and then got injured. But, they had Chris Paddock was a hot prospect who has been sort of up and down. Dinelson Lamet has had injury problems and all this stuff. So this is just like Mike Clevenger they traded for is out for the year. I mean, you're looking down this list and could argue there's up to 4 or 5 number one starters in the mix here. Joe Musgrove they traded for too. This team didn't make it, and starting pitching was a big part of it. And this is, again, why the Cubs have to get a lot more of it going into next year, and anything less is inexcusable.
Yeah, I mean, and the Dodgers, as they always do, even when faced with a big hole in their rotation in losing Trevor Bauer, and a big hole of a human again.
Yeah, exactly.
Big piece of shit, Trevor Bauer. Breaking news, everybody! Yeah. Trevor Bauer is a piece of shit. But I mean, they went out and traded for Max Scherzer, so you're doing okay there. But it's crazy to think about when the two of us and Ken were in Denver watching the Padres get swept by the Rockies and being like, well, that's not what we expected. They've just never really gotten it together since then, frankly.
No, Jake Arrieta couldn't turn it around over there. It's too bad. But yeah, when we were watching them against the Rockies, it felt like, okay, it's a tough stretch. And then the tough stretch just went the whole rest of the time. You got Machado yelling at Tatis. Tatis got kicked out in the 5th inning of the game, and then there was a big an interaction caught.
Do you feel it was Machado about nothing?
There we go. He's getting there. It's the end of season, getting to the finish line. I think it was Machado about something, I would say. But yes, that's, would be a perfect headline.
If there's a San Diego equivalent of the New York Post, that would have had to be the headline.
100%. Yeah. So as we end this super disappointing and frustrating Cub season, I think it's for baseball fans, and if you're listening to this, you surely are one. I mean, it's that there is at least an interesting overall baseball run to the finish here. I think that obviously the American League wild card could get bananas. As we record this on Tuesday, right now the Mariners are a game and a half back of Boston, and then you got the Yankees right there. The A's are technically not out of it. The Blue Jays right there too, 1 game back, I think. So that should be a mess, but a lot of fun. And then the playoffs should be fun. Like, it's a lot of good teams.
Yeah. Did you see that Yankees Red Sox game on Sunday night?
I did not.
Oh my God. I don't know if you saw any of the highlights. Basically, Aaron Judge was out twice and lived on to see. So I'm trying to think of, I think Yankees were down by 1. It's like runners on first and second or something like that with Judge at the plate. He fouls one off, and the Red Sox first baseman just like what he should have done is like run all the way to the barrier and then work his way back, but he kind of like gingerly ran over there and dropped a pop-up that would have ended the at-bat. Then Aaron Judge foul tips it into the catcher's glove, and like on the transfer throwing it back to the pitcher, he drops it, And so they call it a foul tip, which I'm pretty sure is challengeable. I don't know why they didn't challenge it. He like very clearly caught it. And then as he was just like dropping it into his hand, it fell out. So the at bat continues. Judge lines a ball into the gap, goes for 2 runs, and then Stanton comes up and hits a ball like I don't know, 460 feet over the monster. And it was what was happening to the Red Sox was very strange and felt Cubsian. And also, Schwarber had popped a ball up that was dropped by Joey Gallo. Like there was
I saw that
plays all over the place.
Yeah,
and it was. And I was on the flight back from Chicago on Sunday night, and all of a sudden I kept hearing this commotion, and I realized that like there were pockets of people watching the Yankees game. Because at first, like I don't know, on a plane you're always kind of like alert for any weird commotion, especially now. It's like, oh, it's some guy like, did he, pee on his mask in the middle of
is he doing mask things? First flight I took back after the pandemic, 2 people were dragged off the plane for such a thing. So this, I mean, it's relatively common now, but yeah.
But no, it's just celebrating the Yankees game. So yeah, we'll see. I'm excited to watch the playoffs as a baseball fan. I last year was the same. Once the Cubs were out of it, like immediately, I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll just watch baseball now.
Yeah. And it may be a case where I find myself tuning more into baseball over the next couple of weeks than I have in a while. Mm-hmm. It's like I feel like, I mean, it's interesting to see how you fan in a season like this, because we haven't had a season like this for our Cubs in so long,
right?
And I find that I do have to watch it less. I don't watch zero, but I do have to watch it less, and I think that's healthy. Do I still read?
Watch the Cubs less?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, life has to go on, in other ways. And I'm rooting for all the players. I'm looking into, I am frequently checking the box score afterwards, basically turning into a baseball fan from like the 60s when games, weren't all televised. Right. So, and I'm reading everything Zahadev has to write. I'm reading everything Mooney has to write. The Athletic is great. And those guys are so on point, I think, especially I've been really digging Mooney's energy lately. Sahadev and Mooney are great writers. Both it seem like legit dudes, and Mooney I think has the proper holding the Cubs' feet to the fire and like not taking their bullshit vibes in a way that has been good. So I find myself in this part of the season. I'm still reading every word from the good writers, but I am watching less. How have you found?
Very much the same, and I don't want to say I'm happy about it because I would very much prefer that the Cubs were about to head to the playoffs. But as people who follow this team as intensely as you and I do, there is something to be said for having a little bit of a break from it. Like in the same way that I feel like after the election last year, I just noticed all of a sudden that there was a time where I just like wasn't reading the news a lot, or I wasn't like listening to the Daily every day. And I was like, oh, I didn't even consciously do this, but I'm just not as tuned in because I don't feel like I have to be. And the funny thing about it though is that this is the first like baseball season that I've gone through in a relationship, and I have told my girlfriend, I was like, I want you to know that like this is not really reflective of how much I would be watching baseball in ordinary circumstances. So just, in a scenario where you're still with me a year from now in September and the Cubs are competing, I will be watching a lot more baseball.
There will be a level of this that's more intense for sure. Yes. There's been less explosive involuntary shouts in my house from my end than there usually would be in the same way. Sort of a season, letting the field of fandom lie fallow in a certain way for this season, and meanwhile, still reading every box score and every article and listening to a couple of Cubs podcasts, and also doing our own Cubs podcast and talking about a season that ended the way I did want to. I think I should say that I dominated the fantasy football fantasy baseball season that we were in with some of your favorite Cubs writers and podcasters.
It seems like much like the Cubs, a lot of people kind of checked out at a certain point.
Yeah, I was running away with it, and people, it's too bad such dominance shut people off. But our friend,
I believe I was over 500, so I'll take that.
There you go. Absolutely. We had it was a league run by Greg Huss. of the Growing Cubs podcast. The Cubs related guys, Corey and Brendan, were in there. Brian Smith at Cub Prospects were in there. So it was a fun group. And
talk your shit, Kev. Talk your shit.
I mean, I won by a lot. It's just hard to. it's a fun group.
Who are your key contributors?
Let's take a look at this. My key contributors were. First of all, my team name was Jock Strope, which I think is very good on baseball pun stuff and involving Cub player names. Now, did either Cub end up on the Cubs post June? No, absolutely not. So that's perfect for the season. I'll just give you my lineup. Your boy Wilson Contreras, Freddie Freeman, Ryan McMahon, Austin Riley, Corey Seager, Mitch Haniger, Eloy Jimenez, your boy Walsh.
R.I.P.
Yeah, R.I.P. Dead, but still contributing. And then just a pitching staff that was killer. Woodruff, Ray, Rodon, Lance Lynn, Castillo, Freddie Peralta, Eovaldi, Kyle Gibson, so
it's a hell of a squad.
19-3.
Congratulations. I think I was like maybe 12-11 or something like that. I did my best. I'll tell you what did happen is I lost my fantasy football matchup this week with the second highest total in the entire league. By less than 1 point on the final pass play from Dak Prescott.
Insanely maddening. He
threw a ball that was like, there was a cutback, a touchdown scored, which is the only reason that his point total was that high, and then they took him out. So not even an opportunity for a fumble or something that would get me back that point.
Extremely frustrating. Just absolutely maddening. And that's what we do for fun.
Yeah, my 3.4 points from Allen Robinson didn't help a lot. Shout out Justin Fields on the Bears offensive line.
Shout out Nagy. Shout out everybody over at Bears camp.
I was texting my friend who I'm in the league with, and I told him that I'm pretty sure that I would have at least 2 Netflix specials by now if I didn't play fantasy sports. The amount of time that I waste on something so trivial is really appalling.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, I do the same thing, and I'm in a big money league and in the finals in this other league, and really need Mitch Haniger to go absolutely nuts this week. So
you heard it here first, IRS. If you need to, if Kevin doesn't declare his winnings from fantasy baseball, we've got proof.
And then I lost. That's all that means. So I feel like especially since my stand-up bit about Mike Pence blew up so big this year, I feel like the audit's coming next year. So I gotta get my shit together. Any other Cubs stuff? I mean, otherwise the other Cubs things we've had this week, Schwindel keeps hitting. That's great. Happy for him. Whatever.
His hitting streak did come to an end finally, I believe, right?
Yeah, still hitting well.
Fucking awesome if a dude like Frank Schwindel was the one to break DiMaggio's record.
It would be so great. Yeah, Joe DiMaggio sucks. He's a bad person. He's overrated. He was a good baseball player, but he's overrated. In terms of his legacy versus what he was.
You're more of a Dom guy.
I'm a big Dom DiMaggio mark. Absolutely. I'm a Shemp DiMaggio guy. Actually,
the fuck is Shemp? Is there a third brother?
Yep. I'm a Harpo DiMaggio. It would be really great. Anyone to break DiMaggio's streak would be almost anyone would be big thumbs up from me, I guess. But yeah, man, next week we're gonna do a legit big season review podcast because this season for the Cubs comes to a merciful end on Sunday, correct?
Yep.
And so
I was at least hoping that the Cubs would have a chance to disrupt the Cardinals the final weekend, but it seems like they are not. They are not to be disrupted.
It won't matter. Won't matter. So I guess let's go get that 7th draft pick going into next year. And that's what we got to root for. And so we'll do that season finale podcast. But thank you for listening as you have throughout this year. And please do follow us at Away Games Pod on Twitter, on Instagram. Go over to Manscaped if you want to get some grooming utensils. Get your lawnmower 4.0. Use the promo code AWAYGAMES. Get 20% off and free shipping. Why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, show the person in your life that you care more about your nether regions than the Ricketts care about the Cubs.
100%. And I care more about everyone's balls than the Ricketts care about the Cubs. If this season is any indicator, and I'll tell you what, I don't even care about balls that much. So that's it. What a perfect way to end. Anything else, Adam, before we close it?
Nah, let's get out of here.
Yeah, let us get out of here. Bye, everybody.